I'm going to have another go at network calculus, we were calling it. Honestly, I wrote the title earlier today and I got scared. I think it's universal that everyone's a bit scared of maths. Even those who really enjoy it, like, still, it's a lot that's going to happen. What's beeping at me? So we want to ask the question, basically, of, let's just draw a really basic neural network. Let's do something like this. Number compares two values of it, and from that returns a number. I think Zor is structured something like this. How much? So we're running it through these three functions. How much complexity of a function can we write into just this? It's weird, when you go back to all those years, you're always like, I can barely remember what, like, I can remember the sensations in me on my understanding of something, but I don't know about you, I have to rederive everything from scratch every time. That's the only way I know how to know stuff, just to induct my way up. So old ideas like this one, I've only got the faintest, like, half grasp of why. Because I remember being convinced that this was great. I was really enjoying it. And you find a nice problem and it's just a pleasure to work away at, and the results you find are beautiful, really. strange robot friends. Well, that's nice and light. Yeah, that's much nicer. Yeah, I am. Back to the phone camera. And that honestly works quite well. I think we need some music. Oh wait, this isn't a royalty-free one. Do you ever go searching through Spotify? It's one of those semi-social networks that spaces like this were really so delocalized, like low occupancy social networks. They completely have the capacity to like pull more people out. I think something we don't realise and maybe don't even really want to acknowledge is how small a locality we have any awareness of on the internet. There's this weird thing of like, we kind of know that the people who build the internet we use Not necessarily those building the platforms, but those building the content. I got so distracted by the playlist. There we go. Hey, look at it. I need a shorter name for you than that. Strange internet ghosts who haunt me. That is what a parasocial relationship is like. It's like having a well-meaning ghost who's hanging around in your house. Just like, oh, don't go in the pantry unless, like, the ghost is very nice, but it's very imaginary friends. This silent audience. A lot of what I've been thinking about recently has been how funneled down we can be in thought. To such small localities as we are. Like, just then searching just for some music to put on in the background, you realise that the wealth of what you choose from at any one moment, that pool is so much smaller than the pool of what exists. So how do we come to have such commonalities in our view? How do we recombine so much as we often do? I don't know what's got me thinking about this again. I think it's because I'm having to kind of get back into the headspace when I was last thinking about it. So, if there's one motif written, this pen is a little bit too thick for this. Use this. Writ all around, like in my head, basically always, it's that of the potential well. Some shape that, the gravity well, basically. Oh, we never draw gravity wells anymore, but we used to. They were great. No, it's not endless. Nothing is singular. When we think of and talk about the internet, we talk about it like it's a social construct, which it is, but it's also very much a physical construct. It does obey physical law, and it's quantized for one thing. Like it's very quantizable. It quantizes along like numbers of followers. Like it's dealing with integer numbers. There's a physics to it. And it pulls us in certain directions. And the thing that pulls us is kind of like basically attention economy. But that phrasing of it ignores the fact that it's actually just ideation that we're passing. We're passing new ideas for ideation. This is then some planet down here. Let's get some nice. I always find the last one so tricky. That's alright. Yeah, you see this a lot in quantum as well, because it's the form of a potential. And there's this bizarre thing in the way that we teach physics. We start with something that is kind of case by case by case, in the form of force laws. So we start in a world of like if the spaceship is pushing stuff out in this direction, like spaceship's going to be a Tamagotchi. The Tamagotchi had buttons, right? I don't remember what Tamagotchi features looked like. It was like a squid, wasn't there? We teach like, thrust is coming out this way, and drag is heading off over here, and you can learn physics force by force by force, and lots of people do. That's particularly how even a few generations of professors before us would be taught it. Like, have you done your gravity homework? But that case by caseness, like, because you learn case, and then you learn case, and then you learn another case, then you actually after that you learn another case. And then there's a different case, and it goes on forever until it's a pretty weak poor camera's struggling. That's better. I like that washed outness. But then you start learning, like, I'm now actually drawing off what you guys can see rather than just looking at my page. This is oh no! This just isn't a thing then. Just trying to fit everything on page. God, that looks like a comb over. Let's just do a nice block patch. A completely unnecessary title card. You know what, I'm just gonna... Oh, I can... Well, that's sneaky. I can get one over on the big wigs over at Ivy Cam. One incredible way that that some product manufacturers keep people on platform is to make there be so much complexity on that platform that no one can really be bothered to go through the headache of changing over. Like, it's just so ubiquitous. And because to make anything, you need so many kind of reverse patrons, people who are willing to provide the thing you need. what this is. I guess a spaceship can be flying around some distant sun. One weird thing about your doodles is you never really show them off, so you're used to doing them at a different... Because I'm looking at a completely wrong angle here. I'm in a different angle than you guys are. And I'm realising how much it changes some of the impact of the brushwork. They didn't do too much, but... Both my parents are effectively, in their way, art teachers. That's nice. And that meant I got lifetimes of like good art teacher advice, basically. But the weird thing about getting a lot of like having a good knowledge of the requirements of a technical skill doesn't necessarily translate into talent at that skill. That to go a bit lower. Oh, it's weird using the camera for drawing. I think my hand moves too quick for this. No, I'd probably get used to it. Yeah, so DNA is a wonderful example of something that is really difficult to understand from this perspective, from the old-fashioned, from this perspective you can see now. Like, DNA isn't, like, it is definitely governed by physical forces, but it's governed by so many physical forces that after a while they become, like, effectively chemical forces. Like, I think the old-fashioned way of teaching physics, of teaching all science, is basically to try and turn it into force laws and then test the mathematics of those force laws, which is basically a geometry test. But there's another way of thinking through these things, which is logarithmically. And all of that kind of like, I can't imagine itness of how big would the books be, becomes kind of like, oh yeah, no, that seems about right, how big the books could be. Because I think that's not a very good example. Well, no, it's, if I was to ask you guys to estimate something like, no pressure to do it, this is not homework. How many subway cars are there in New York? So the room full of books is kind of lovely because it actually maps it to 3D space, and so it's kind of imaginable. You could imagine walking around that room. And so there is, like, all the things are in order. You've kind of encoded it so it fits in 3D space, and you're like, it's fine. Because if you do stretch out in a line of text, it's awful. Like, you just can't make any sense of it. Take that 3D space and start injecting potentials into it. Start asking, like, okay, like, you can think of a potential as a, like, question of, it's not really true that that's it. Everything else is statistics. How likely is it? That's really what any graph of potential looks like, means. Like, how likely is it that something could come to be here? And so, like, somewhere in that library of the DNA, there's going to be 14 Ds in a row. And, like, you know, it doesn't matter that it's there. But you could ask a question of, like, okay, at which locations are there the most Ds in a row? And you might actually find it has some structure. You probably wouldn't, but it might not be that they're just all randomly dotted about. I'm going to switch to the monitor. Actually, I don't need to do it yet. I've got so into watching these recently. Oh, if you want something to take your mind off things. Yeah, amplitude is... because a potential is just mapping everything to a scalar field. And all I mean by a scalar field is something that can be described by unique... the value of it can be described at all unique points. Basically, you could go anywhere on the page, or you could go anywhere in the room and read the value. This is just one. But I think this might have been the first one I watched, and I love it. So these are a bunch of different sorting algorithms. And all they're trying to do is get a list not how you spell. Just trying to get a list of numbers into sorted order and doing it with different techniques. So So this is actually unwatchable. I've tried to watch it before, but you're like, oh my god, what is going on? Some of them are nice, like you're like, oh yeah, I can see Vedic sort seems pretty nice, and they're all like fighting off against each other. But they're just trying to order some things in the best order they can, into the right order. I think this is nice. This everything starts. So the list every time is going to start the wrong way round, and they're all trying to, as quickly as possible, resort it. Oh my god. There is sound, and it's kind of fascinating as well, but that's too much. So this is an algorithm resorting some data. But you could look at this like sand flowing downhill, and you could actually start writing down some different like ways to describe it. Like this one, the first one, sound was only ever allowed to move one direction. Now it's allowed to move both directions. These are actually some very inefficient sorts. All of these are kind of made to go at the right pace. But all of these you could start describing by something that looks like force laws. And I think force laws are really useful to spot. I think every time we see a force law, it is easier to understand. But potentials are so much more general, and they basically explain all shapes. Like force laws are just something we're used to. They are 3D geometry. I think it's hard to intuit, but I don't know. I spend all my time thinking in like non-Euclidean high-dimensional spaces, because it's where I work. And there's a way in which I see something like this, and I'm like, this is doing exactly the same thing as a pile of sand flowing downhill. And then some do something like this, and you're like, why? Why does it do it like that? And all of these, actually, depending on what sort it is, have good reasons for them. And in fact, you can even ask questions like, the more symmetrical sorts are the fastest sorts, and the optimization. Look at it! It's wonderful. It makes mountains. Then those mountains get like farther and further away. This is the sort of blade that woodworkers want you to have. Yeah. This one's great because it just does it immediately, then it keeps on doing it for a bit, and you're like, dude. All of these will give the same result because it is just, they're all the same numbers, and it's just sorting them into order. So what we're seeing each time is a different process trying to achieve the same task, starting in the same place, ending in the same place. Like, there's something like, if you ever watch an inkjet printers go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and you're like, what are you making? And then you're like, oh, it's a bee. We're seeing that kind of process here. I think we look at algorithmic complexity backwards often. We keep asking like, Cromwell, fetch me a beautiful algorithm. I wish to give it to Anne. Um, Shout out to my boy Hilary Mantel. Um, New book in stores. And then you come to something like this and you're like, this is beautiful. This is corridors going way into the distance. Like, how is this a way to sort numbers? And now corridors coming towards us. We're coming to the end of a corridor. Like the forms he's making. And then we get to this point and the corridors reverse. And like we gain vanishing points. Dude, you don't ever have to apologise for not understanding something. Not understanding something is the right way to go about things. It's the way that you give yourself the capacity to understand things. It does a rough job, then the last bit just comes along and it cleans it up. I love coming across something I don't understand. It's such a pleasure because I'm like, oh great. Once I know this, I'll know another thing. And so I think, because I used to apologise for not knowing stuff. I used to apologise for getting stuff wrong, and actually I think that was kind of drilled into you that you were supposed to get stuff right, but I think that was terrible for the pace at which I was learning stuff. The times in my life where I've just been like, I am absolutely unapologetic for having absolutely no idea what's going on, I learn by far the quickest. I think we have a culture that makes us feel like we're supposed to know things from the very beginning. Like, universe starts and you're supposed to know everything. And it's such an unhealthy instinct. If we turned it around the other way around, it's like, universe starts and you're starting from scratch, and good luck if you can work out how to bang two sticks together. And you look at like every generation that comes through school knows more. And this is the most wonderful thing. You're like, oh, I just can't wait to see what the next generation gives. Like, I just want to make sure that they make me some nice video games to play when I'm old and like falling apart. Oh, we have another Sawtooth one, but this one has more kind of similarity and structure. Algorithmically, yes. In fact, it's not even that hard. It just doesn't yet fit on our computers. And it would take so much like manhandling to be worth it. We like to think like, oh, you know, we'll achieve everything that's possible. We'll climb every mountain. But no, we half-heartedly hike up some of the more interesting hills. There's so much that we kind of know how to do and we could do, and we don't do because it's just a lot of work. Like, human capacity is not limited by the fundamental capacity of humans. It's just limited by, like, how much of your day you can spare. And we always have to be making those choices of, like, how much can I put into this world? Oh, I love these disappearing towers. I do study philosophy. I don't regret that I studied physics as an undergraduate. But what you study isn't the thing your degree is called. A degree is kind of just technical school that you have to go to if you want to get a job in that field. But the technical school also just happens to be the best place to learn things generally. We are all studying philosophy. It's one of the things that we can't ever stop studying because we keep on seeing more of the world. And whoa, sometimes they're just like, no, not messing around, just want it done. This one too, it's just like, get them out. But there is, though, in some communities, this great judgment on philosophy as a kind of, you're like, it's not even very good mathematics. Oh, I would have this as an album cover. Less of a fan of this. I liked it when there's more layers. Some of the early computer graphics people were like working out that you could make an effect like this with merge sort. Like, it's coming to the end of it when you get to something like Super Mario Bros. But they're still kind of playing the game of like, oh, how can we draw a picture of this with an algorithm? It changed when storage became large enough that you could just upload a picture of the thing. And when rendering softwares became like a common thing, but for a while they had to be like, what algorithm can we use to describe where the object is? I mean, I think reductionism is necessary to understand anything. I think we only understand by reducing, making the thing more easier. Like, one thing I was amazed by, and I'm always amazed by, is they're inefficient sometimes, basically. I'm always amazed when I come across any inefficiency. I'm like, oh, how did this happen? Tell me all about it, Sharon. Oh, and then he said, like, it's kind of systems gossip. You're like, oh, I want to know the goss on this graph. What is it doing now? You thought it was done, and it went back and it tried it again. Like, this is insane. Oh, and then it goes. It's gone. Yeah. You're always. I think those who are really efficient at understanding something are those who are able to break it down to simple problems that they can then work up from in a kind of algorithmic way. I think that's what we all have to do to understand something. I think I've been guilty since the day I worked out that I had a brain up here. once I really understood what a brain was and what it meant, like, I was like, oh, I don't want this. Take this cup from me, Mum. There's this skit that my partner and I do where like we're like dirtbag teenagers from an American high school movie, but we're also the birds thinking of leaving their nests, like actually chicks. So we're like it's like very Finding Nemo. Like, oh, I loved Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo, I was like, oh my god, they're children, but they're fish. Because it was made abundantly clear from early in my life that the ability to compute stuff faster was always going to be an advantage to me, so I just kind of worked out how to do it. But not because I was really good at working out how to do it. I worked out how to do it because I enjoyed working out how to do it. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll put time into this. I just liked working stuff out, and I quickly found that every single problem, if I could reduce it to a simple enough paradigm and then start kind of juggling that paradigm, I had worked it out. And I think this is how we learn, for example, learn a video game. Like the first video game you play, where you're doing space flight, you're just bumping into everything. And then a new video game comes along which changes the controls and you're like, oh, this is even worse. But eventually you kind of simplify the difficulty of it to until the point where it feels natural. Like, I talk quite a lot, and it was very influential to me, about Kerbal Space Program. And in that game, you have to think about movement completely differently. It works completely physically, but like the whole sensation of it feels nothing like moving around in any game before. And so it grabs your attention and says, think about this space. And you're like, oh god, I've got to think about the space. And at first you're terrible at it, and eventually you learn it. And in that process of learning it, you've learned a whole new way to move in space. And you've learned a new set of tools, and the whole time, other ideas have been piggybacking on it, and you probably have a pretty good idea of how gravity works at this point. Like, you kind of back infer it, and then you set so much good groundwork that someone comes along with a 1 over r squared law, and you're like, oh yeah, that actually makes sense. Yeah, that fits with my experience. This is, I think, what's so difficult about teaching physics sometimes. You have to supply lived experiences of things that people will never experience. Like, I need my students to know what it feels like to fall into potential wells. I need them to know that, like, gut-wrenching, like, ugh. That probably just makes me a bad teacher, but like, those are the students that I really get through to, I think. Those who, like, what is this doing? This seems terrible. Some of these are terrible, some of these we're seeing like purposefully bad sorts. I mean, it's basically like, you have to spend some time selling yourself at any moment in your life, and it doesn't pay to sell yourself by making mistakes. And so, like, you could see your life is split up between times where you are kind of unstructuredly just self-improving and times where you have a specific goal. I don't think you ever lose the ability to learn. I don't think you ever lose your will to learn. I think a lot of people, I have this sometimes. I lose my ability to, my like will to learn about twice a day. I sit down and I'm like, I'm really looking forward to learning something. Then I'm 10 minutes in. Like if you watch this stream like around the middle of a day, I'll turn the stream on and I'll be like, I'm going to talk about this, and I don't even like my brain never gets into gear. But sometimes it really clicks, and I'm just able to go. Like sometimes I'm completely writer's blocked, staring at a page, being like, is it 2 of that? Is that the next thing that needs to happen to the characters? There's this quote about Ramanujan that is a kind of pithy remark, but someone accuses him of having every positive integer as his own personal friend, and I think that way of thinking about it, like, if you do much work with number theory, like, or if you do much work with high dimensional geometries, there's some numbers you start seeing all the time. Like, you're like, oh yeah, 17 dimensions, that's where this particular problem goes from being solvable to unsolvable. And after a while, the integers become blasé to you, some of them. But some of them, you're like, oh, I never see 19. The same with like when I was planet searching, it's kind of fun little gossip. You're like, have you guys seen? There's a new planet. It's slightly bigger than this peak looked like it was going to be. Like, people who love data will always love seeing more data appear on the plot. Like, that's why this is lovely. Like, every single action, you're like, oh, give me some more data. Yeah. I'm thinking about doing a YouTube series. I have no idea if people would watch it, where I kind of interrogate each of these algorithms. Just for the fun of it, like I kind of treat each one as a geometrical space, and I go looking at like what you can do in it. I'm really enjoying this one. Oh, I'm so excited. Just to share potential theory with more parts of the world. Like, I'm so excited to see what different fields do as they start to pick up on potential theory. Like, already I'm seeing potential theory in geography, and it's beautiful. Like, they've started to kind of move their brains off a map space onto abstract potential spaces, and I don't think they even know they're doing it yet. Maybe they do. I really hope that they do. But I think a bunch of them are doing topology without really realising it and re-topologizing it. Like, I think that cartography has always been topology. And cartography has for so long been the language of geography the study of like humans from a broad lens. Maybe I should work as a data science anthropologist. Basically, there's a structure that I want to play about with here for, ideally, a few years, and I've got to find a place where the early results of it yield results. The early kind of steps in it yield results. Because this is really cynical, I'm sorry, but the current way that creative thought can happen in academia is if it finds something of kind of immediate value to piggyback on. So you have to always like trade it off against it. You have to be like, oh, I would really like to think about this, but I've got to find a planet at the end of it so that I can justify my existence. You, like, as an academic, you are both the person with the big soup ladle and the boy asking for more. Because you just want to go off and think about some nice shapes. That's why you're in it. You just really like particular problems you came across, and you're like, yeah, I'd like to keep thinking about these. You like particular games. And it's these games that we learn to translate onto the Bogosaur. Bogosaur is purposefully, I can't watch it, it's so ugly. It's purposefully terrible. Now we're going to watch exactly the same thing, but we're going to watch it in a different space. And seeing these was transcendental to me. Like, this translating of algorithms to a motion that could be described as happening in a space. Like, look at these. This is water drying off a table. This is sewing together a rift. This one is one octopus sweeping its arm all the way around. These can become characters. They can become kind of... One of them's Mr. Happy and one of them's Mr. Bogosort. And I think you see the same character all throughout. This was, I think Feynman put it wonderfully, just in his framing of some of his most famous physics lectures. The character of physical law. This is collapse. This is gravitational collapse. This is that same process. These things are moving towards each other, like forming their structure out of collapse along one dimension. But this is the sorting algorithm that we just saw, and it looked different when it was a comb sort. These shapes are all actually the same thing, just in different geometries. Quicksort. Quicksort is the most incredible algorithm, and every time we see it, we'll see it looking different. And it is by far the most efficient. A few of them, like this, is more stable. There's variations which have other good reasons why you use them. But the quick sorts are they're just that this is what the most efficient way to sort a list looks like. It's beautiful. This looks exactly like scale 3 collapse. This one looks like a firework and trailing its way across the sky. The fact that these are drawing particular shapes, it's not just coincidence, it's that there's different ways of bringing numbers, of putting numbers in orders. That's what force laws are. They're the combination of many different processes of ordering. In fact, as you move to potentials, you start to be able to move away from like, this is the law of physics, like this is the average law of physics. It's just, it's such a good average that it actually works all the time. This is it's a train disappearing into the distance. And this one, look, it draws it. You like, it's one of the like each one of these sorts is the structure of a joke. Each one has so much character. There was a wonderful series online called Humans of New York, and I think it was done by like just chatting to people on subway platforms, but it was just observations of people in New York City, and it was in such amount and kind of with minimal, like, just little short stories about them, little episodes. And I think that one of the reasons it was so powerful is you see enough of them, you start to see the symmetries. The patterns of behaviour that that help you recognise the narrowness of our senses of otherness. And Because everyone feels like about their friends. Everyone looks at their friends and they're like, these are people who feel like me. Woo! We checked it all, and we've checked it all out. We've worked it all out. This is the one. Oh, I love this one. I've been planning to learn about spiral structure for such a long time, and this is such a wonderful tool set for examining it. There was a school of British artists whose compositions were just geometric shapes in the natural world, making patterns out of leaves and walking straight lines, wearing away shapes until patterns emerge. Like, look at this one. It's play it in reverse, and it's everyone fleeing the ring world as it breaks apart. I guess in a way my conjecture is every Greek play is in these sorts, and every sorting algorithm is in these Greek plays. And then it does that. You're like, where did that come from? How has this happened? You're looking at it and you're like, what is this? This doesn't seem like a good idea. And then it strikes, and it's like, this is why I've been doing this. And then this one, you're like, oh, is it like all art is just plagiarizing nature. Come at me, big Greek play. Oh. You watch this one and you're like, well, obviously that's the thing to do. Just go around and put them all in place. And then it does it again and you're like, what? And then this one and you're like, it's spiders weaving webs. Just cleaning my whiteboard. How's everyone been doing this week? I think we've got another big hit of some of the realities of this, like I certainly have. Sometimes I pride myself on I'm 2 days ahead of your grief. But we're all feeling a grieving process, I think. And that strange pre-grieving of we know something's going to happen. This one it then zips itself up. A lot of this structure is just order of operations. Oh, this is beautiful. It makes a clock. Oh, I liked it better when there was more clock. No, actually, this is lovely. One of the lovely things about sorting algorithms is you can make them up at home. Like, just a pack of cards is completely enough. Get a deck of 52 cards, write a number on the back of each one, and think about the best ways you could invent of sorting them as quickly as possible and in the fewest combinations as possible. I mean, start with like 5 cards, but work your way up to 52 when you're like, yeah, I'm quick at this. It's a kind of solitaire-like game of doing it in the quickest way. It's juggling, basically. weird thing about thinking hard is it immediately exhausts you. How long have I been at this for? I guess an hour and a half. I'm completely like sort of pseudo overwhelmed by this. So it's like a butterfly closing its wings. That's just because they're isotropic, but with the largest one sorted out, you get something very like mass segregation when they're ordered like this. Oh, is it doing something at the centre as well? If I could, I'd be playing Eleanor Rigby. Actually, thinking about it, I just realised how kind of commoditizing. I don't know if anyone thinks this. The appeal of Eleanor Rigby to me, I'm realising, is slightly commoditizing poverty. Everyone's worried about fidget spinners, but actually, all through the coronavirus, everyone might just be at home watching these. It's hypnotic, isn't it? I'm done. I'm done. I could not do more. Thank you guys for joining me. I like this drawing kind of stream. Yeah, we'll keep doing it.